every parent parents differently, and that is okay. And so just want to give everyone grace in that, and hopefully we can have some good conversation or just knowledge gained. So we are here today for guiding and responding to behaviors. And this conversation is really going to be geared towards probably your 2 to 5 year olds. However, it's applicable to a lot of ages as well. We'll talk a little bit about our school agers and a little bit about the younger toddlers too. My name is Jamie, and I am the Family Engagement Specialist here at Child Care Answers. I am a mom. I am a former teacher. I taught preschool for many years. I also have worked in a different capacity throughout the early childhood field. So I am excited to just share with you what I have gathered over the years. So again, if you have questions, always feel free to ask. We are a part of Child Care Answers, the Child Care Resource and Referral Network. We specifically support families in Hamilton, Hendricks, and Marion County. However, this network is statewide, and there are 4 other child care resource and referrals across the state. So if you know of anyone who lives in a different county and you want to share some of our resources, we can always connect them to one of the other SDAs or resource and referrals. We are very active on social media, which is exciting. We try to put a lot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We also have a new TikTok account that we've been working on and developing just to create some short glimpses into how to support families on TikTok. So you can find us there as well. Okay, so before we dive in, we're going to start today with just a brief little scenario, and I hope it works. I'm trying something a little bit new today. Okay, so we're going to think through this. We're calmly asking our child to pick up their toys, and they're just playing and they're ignoring you. You ask them firmly to do it again, and they're still ignoring you. And you ask again and again and again, and now you're frustrated and we're left screaming. I think we all have been there as parents or as aunts, uncles, grandparents. It can be hard and difficult. So I want to encourage us that today we're just hopefully going to gain some tips to be able to support children during these moments, but also just to acknowledge that there will be days and there will be moments for sure that are still it's not going to go perfectly because we aren't perfect and our children aren't perfect. So hopefully you'll take away some tips for guiding behaviors today. First things first, when it comes to behaviors, I always say this, and if you've been on one of our workshops before, you probably have heard this, but behaviors have a meaning. Typically, it is a form of communication. So a child's trying to tell you something. They are not considered scientifically or in the world of education to be good or bad, but instead, they're just a response to our environment. They are a response to what's going on around us, how we're feeling on the inside, what we're feeling with our senses, and just relationships that are going on in that environment. We also must remember that some behaviors are actually developmentally appropriate. And I think one of the biggest behaviors that have this misconception is toddlers and biting. So toddlers are always exploring the world with all their senses. They're putting things in their mouth, they're tasting it, they're realizing, oh, that's not food, this is food, trying to understand what's going on. And because of this, coupled with their lack of communication skills, because it's developmentally appropriate that some of them are not speaking in full sentences and they're working on that communication and what this means to interact with other people, you might find a toddler to bite because they're trying to figure out what that is. Plus they're teething, and teething hurts. And so you might find that they're trying on biting behaviors to see, if I bite you, will you play with me? Or if I bite you, do you taste good? Obviously not. So they're just trying it all out, trying to figure it all out. And so you might see your preschooler maybe refusing to follow directions because they're trying to test out their independence a little bit more. That's developmentally appropriate. And maybe your school ager is being a little bit more upset or aggressive verbally than usual, but that's because they're learning more complex emotions and they're taking them in and they're noticing them and they're observing them. trying to navigate all that and everything that's going on inside of them. So positive parenting is not the same as permissive parenting. And that's the idea that parents do not set firm boundaries and that they allow all types of behaviors. Also, I want to note that positive parenting, when we're talking about it, isn't necessarily the platform or what the book or we're doing exactly positive parenting. This is more just how we can support our children through big emotions, big behaviors, and using positive parenting, positive guidance, and a lot of other parenting strategies combined. So instead, positive parenting is more about establishing these fair and firm boundaries with your child. So we are saying that it's not okay to hit, but it's okay to have these big feelings. So what can we do instead? So trying to figure out where that boundary is without using that harsh punishment. It's about really understanding your child's needs and making sure they're being met and emotions are being heard, while you're helping them learn to consider others. So, making sure that your child understands that when you do X, this person might feel like this, or when this happens, I feel a little bit frustrated. And so working through those together. With this idea of positive parenting and gentle parenting, there are consequences for the inappropriate or maybe those challenging behaviors. But the difference is that consequences really correspond or align with that original behavior. You spill the water, let's pick it up together. You throw the food, let's pick it up. So working through those very logical and natural consequences. It's important to note that children really do thrive when we show them love and trust. And I love this idea that positive parenting, really what it is we are showing love by acknowledging their feelings and emotions, but then also we're extending our hand and our trust by providing our children with independent choices that they can make for themselves and for their behaviors. And I love that idea of love and trust. I think it goes hand in hand, but then it's also showing our child that we believe in them as independent beings and that we believe that they can make choices for themselves. But all the while, you're guiding them and giving them those boundaries to support and lay the foundation for those choices. Again, we set expectations and we set boundaries, but this is through that love and trust lens. So we're going to look at an example here. So this is a little toddler. It's time to go to the store. You've given those transition warnings. You set the Alexa for 5 minutes. You've helped them clean up their toys. You've done everything possible to make a beautiful transition, and they don't want to go. I have been there, and I believe that most parents have if you've had a young toddler. So positive parenting, again, provides choices. So it's saying something like, it is time to go. Would you like to hold my hand, or would you like me to carry you? For younger toddlers, they might just keep on crying and saying no. And that's when you can step in and say, okay, my choice, I can tell that you're upset and it's hard to make a choice right now. It's time to go. I'm going to make the choice for you. And you move forward. But as they get older and they're more expressive and be able to answer it, we're going to be able to understand, okay, I have a choice right now. I am going to hold your hand. And then when you're in the car and everyone's calmed down, you can talk about that a little bit more and say, like, that was really hard to make that choice. And I understand that was hard. Maybe you could help me think of some options for us. Do you want to walk by yourself to the door? Do you want to hold my hand to the door? Do you want to take a stuffed animal to the car? So you talk through it just a little bit, because toddlers, it's short and quick, but you talk about it after when they're not so big and having those really big emotions right there. So I think just helping them make those choices and following through with the choice that you have made together. And so just having those conversations and making sure that they, again, have that choice. Okay, so positive parenting or positive guidance is all under this positive parenting, gentle parenting umbrella, if you will. So we know that parenting styles vary and everyone has their own way of parenting their children. There's no right way. However, many parents have found, and many experts in the field have found, that it's really this combination of nurturing and loving relationships, clear expectations, and some structure. So knowing that when I wake up, I'm going to have breakfast, I'm going to have to brush my teeth, I'm going to have to get dressed, and we're going to have to get out the door. So knowing the general routines, this idea that they're able to make choices again and having those natural logical consequences. And then lastly, what really makes the most impact is us as parents modeling what appropriate behaviors should be. A lot of times we'll say no or stop, and the children don't know what to do instead. And so they might continue to do it. And so just modeling those appropriate behaviors. I see that you want to run right now, but we cannot run in here, but we can jump. And so like practice jumping or whatever you are okay with and inside your home. So positive guidance is really this idea of letting your child use their independent skills while you set clear expectations. We're going to go a little bit into diving deeper into positive guidance and what it is versus what punishment looks like. So positive guidance is about sharing with your children that they are loved, even when they are making mistakes. It encourages those positive behaviors by focusing on feelings and problem solving. So this is as opposed to punishment that really focus on the child acting bad rather than the behavior itself. So that was just focusing on, that was really bad, I'm really frustrated, you need to do this because you did that, instead of really saying like, you are angry and I can see you are angry. And when you were angry, I saw that you did this. So just putting the feelings first and focusing on those feelings and trying to help them through that, as opposed to saying you are acting bad and that's not okay. Positive guidance also teaches children how to make good choices and control their own behaviors. So that's giving them, again, choices. It's all about choices. And these choices are always what you want the outcome to be. I always make sure I provide choices that I know that each outcome is what I would prefer. Maybe they can't play with this particular toy because it's not safe for them, or it's not time, or it's too messy because you have to move fast. Like we can play with the stuffed animal, or we can play with the puzzle, and just giving them two choices so that they know what they can do. Punishment really just focuses on our control as parents and teaching children that the adult is in charge of the outcome. So we're kind of like not manipulating, that's not the right word, but we're kind of like guiding them to make the right choice, as opposed to like just providing them with choices that are both appropriate for the environment and time. Positive guidance is focused on praising positive behaviors while setting limits for those negative ones, what you can and cannot do, whereas punishment draws that attention to the negative behaviors. And it can really just create this cycle of dishonesty or rebellion because, you know, maybe they did something, it could have been a mistake, but they've associated it with a punishment in the past. And so they might keep it from you as opposed to like working through it with you. And so over time, punishment can start happening where they keep things from you as opposed to like working through it together. Okay, so I've shared a lot, and I know some people came in a little bit late, which is completely fine. It's a busy time of the day. So we have a little pop quiz, and it's not supposed to mean anything other than just be fun and informative. But can you spot the myth? Positive parenting, A, does not let children face real consequences, or B, hold children accountable through relatable consequences. Which one is not true? Which one is the myth? Yep, A is the correct answer. Thank you, India, for participating. Yeah, so Positive parenting actually lets children face real world consequences through relatable and logical consequences. So that's really great. Yep. Okay, we have two more. Can you spot the myth? Offering positive choices gives A, age-appropriate guidelines, B, opportunities to celebrate ability, and then C, the child gets complete control. Which one's the myth? It is C. The child is not in complete control. The child definitely has independence in their choices. However, at the end of the day, you are in control as the parent. Can you spot the myth? And this is our last one. Positive parenting creates codependent, needy children or empowers children to be independent. A is the myth, absolutely. Yeah, so these are all myths that people have said against positive parenting and gentle parenting. Again, no one's perfect. We are not going to be perfect as parents. We will have moments where we are frustrated and we aren't going to be the perfect little peaceful parent. But these are really myths. Children are being empowered to be independent. We're not creating needy children. In fact, helping them understand their emotions helps them grow and be more self-aware so that they can have more self-regulation and be more in control of their bodies and their minds and just their independence as they grow older. So positive parenting strategies, again, reminding everyone and those who you serve, if you are a community member, that it's not about permissive parenting and just letting them do what they feel. It's about parenting a child with love and with trust. So I'm loving you by listening to your needs, and I trust you to make choices that we have given you. It provides strategies that will help you and your child face all these big emotions together. And I mean, you know, toddlers, you know, 3-year-olds, and even as they get older, those big emotions are there. I still have my big emotions, and I'm sure we all do at times too. So where do we start? So honestly, this might seem very fundamental and really simple, but it must be said just because I think for the pure fact that it's encouraging, that just building relationships, spending time with your child is the foundation for positive and gentle parenting. And that seems like step one of parenting, like done, check, got that done. But sometimes it can be hard to find that time. And I think also sometimes we could be hard on ourselves as parents, and really just acknowledging that like I do spend time with my child, and that is a positive thing that's going to help their growth and their behavior. So you are building foundations just by playing alongside your children and playing with them. And I think also just the idea of keeping perspective, knowing your child's age and their developmental milestones is so helpful because it helps you know how to interact with them during play, helps you know what to expect during play, helps you know when they're going to be saying no all the time or when they might be more prone to maybe biting behaviors or aggressive behaviors. So just keeping that perspective. And then also, this is just a little tip that I think is really great, is telling a joke to reduce tension, especially if you have siblings and they're, you know, you can feel it rising a little bit during play or during dinner. Tell a simple joke, and laughter does a lot. And that seems, again, not like professional advice, but it really does help, and it helps build that relationship with your child. And it really helps with that idea of redirecting the behaviors and the thoughts while still being there for them. Okay, and then the other big place to start is planning ahead. If you do not have predictable schedules and routines right now, and that's something you want to work on, that's a great place to start. Making sure that you have some form of a morning or a bedtime routine really helps with behaviors, especially a bedtime routine, because it sets them up for the day. but I guess you could argue the same for a morning routine. But having a practice that you do together, whether it's reading books, taking a bath, brushing your teeth, saying what you need to say before bed to each other, your I love yous, and what that looks like for your family, and trying to keep that pretty standard. Right now, my daughter and I, we change her diaper. She always has to press the button on the sound machine, and then we snuggle and read a couple books, and then I turn on her nightlight, we sing Twinkle Twinkle, and we go to bed. And that's our nighttime routine. Everything else kind of varies a little bit, but those things are always the same. And then also just this idea of being flexible. Sometimes you're not going to be at home and you're on vacation, and so the routine's not going to be the same. Or maybe grandma's there helping put your children to bed. So just making sure your children understand that, like, this is a routine, but sometimes routines vary. And then also planning for those transitions. We talked about this a little bit before in those examples that we gave, but this idea of giving warnings for transitions, Alexa is the best tool for young children who can talk because it gives them some control, but then also it sets a boundary for them. So just letting your preschooler say, Alexa, set the timer for 5 minutes. And I'm so sorry if I just set your timer for 5 minutes. I forgot. I did that to my colleague the other day. So I apologize if that happened. But having those tools at hand, you can set timers on your phone. You can even just get a handheld timer or like a visual timer. They really do help. It seems, again, silly sometimes to really have to rely on something like that, but the way it helps ease transition for young children to have that visual and audio reminder will be night and day for a lot of children. And then lastly, pick your battles. Know ahead of time what your hot button triggers are. Is it really important that your child wears a sweater today if they really don't want to? Is it really important that they wear shoes outside in your backyard? Like, choose your battles and make sure that when you do choose that battle, you follow through with it. If the answer is yes, they have to wear the sweater, then they have to wear the sweater. But make sure you understand what battle you're choosing, and it's okay to just say, all right, I'm losing this battle today, and my child is walking out in a football helmet, a dress, and some cowboy boots. Like, if that's what it is, then that's what it is. Pick your battles and help them develop those skills to follow through when it's time. Another key part of positive parenting is this idea of regulation and taking care of you. I find brain science when it comes to behaviors and education very interesting. I have learned that the brain is really a social organ. Our brains develop and they change, and they make these changes all the time. They are going crazy between the ages 0 to 5, really even 0 to 3. They're just making all these connections, trying to take in the world and helping the child be able to make sense of new environments and old environments and how they work together. And then also, as we're older, we can still reset some of these pathways in our brains, but it takes longer than it does for young children who are doing it all the time. And so I think it's very interesting that this idea of developing our brain is happening in environments. So in the home environment, at school, with grandma and grandpa, and how children are interacting with the people in that environment. So how do they interact with maybe their moms, or how they interact with maybe their dad? And so working through all those interactions, they're growing and developing, and they're developing self-regulation too, on top of all of that. So what this means for us is that the way we interact with our children is important, and it is critical. Again, we're not going to be 100% all the time, but it is important. So we can support these connections through just taking care of ourselves, which I know can be difficult, especially if you are a working parent, and then you see your child for a couple hours and then you do the nighttime routine and then you start it all over again. But some simple self-regulation tips for us is just to take 3 deep breaths before we enter into maybe a behavior that's really challenging. I did this a lot when I was teaching preschool. I would always just stop real quick, take 3 deep breaths if no one is, in danger, and then enter into a conflict my students were having, because it just helped recenter myself and helped my amygdala calm down, because often you get into this fear or flight stage, or flight and fight stage, and you want to like step in and save the day really quick, or fix it really quick, or maybe you're getting really angry really quick. So those 3 deep breaths help just center us and calm us before we enter into that conversation. Also, positive self-talk throughout the day. I think as parents, we can be really hard on ourselves in our parenting. So just continually reminding yourself that my child is loved, they are cared for, and I'm doing the best I can. I am here at this workshop today, so obviously I'm trying. And so just working and just giving yourself that grace. And then also, this was huge for me, is setting realistic goals. I try to fit a week's worth of things in on a Saturday, and it just doesn't happen because my daughter needs me and I want to play with her and I want to do that too. So making sure I know that if I'm going to the grocery store, that is my big goal for the day, and we're going to get that taken care of, because that's a lot to pack everyone in the car, go to the grocery store, take everything home. It's a lot. So set those realistic goals for yourself. And then stay connected to family and friends. They are a lifeline to you. I think sometimes we think, oh, well, they're just as stressed as I am, but maybe even just talking about that you're stressed, and hearing someone else say, I'm stressed too, and then just talking about it helps so much. So after you take care of yourself and you do some self-regulation with yourself, then there's this idea of co-regulation, which I, again, find so fascinating. So co-regulation is really this idea of finding your calm together. You're working together to regulate your body. So this would be like breathing together, listening to calm music together. If you've ever done something like spell letters on your back, really great. So like writing letters on the back of the child, or a message in their hands. Maybe you can try to spell their name in their hand. This simple touch and the slow movement will help just calm the body. And then some children are like, hey, I'm really upset right now, don't come near me. And that's okay too. Just continually saying, stay close, and I am here when you're ready. So I think helping children know that you are here, it's okay to have space, but I'm still here and I'm not going anywhere. So when it comes to these huge emotions, we just cannot expect our children to really make quality decisions when they're very, very, very upset. I know I cannot make good decisions when I'm upset. I usually need that time to calm down, to rethink it. So remaining calm and considering others' feelings really takes time for young children. And it's also not always developmentally appropriate. So if we try to engage them when they're screaming and crying and having them figure out their feelings at that moment, it's not going to work because they're not ready to talk. They need to let those big feelings subside. And so we really want to help them to manage those feelings. And one way to do that is just giving them space, like we talked about. So this is the part of positive parenting that is acknowledging that our children do need that space. Sometimes we might need to just give them a hug first instead of jumping to the consequence. We might need to let them go calm down in their room before jumping into the consequence. or maybe just a simple touch on their back, just to say like, I'm here for you and I can help you calm down so that we can figure this out together. So these huge emotions, they're in a part of their brain that they just can't calm down and they can't rationalize. And so helping them find that calm will get their brain back into a place that is ready to think through things more logically in an age-appropriate way. All right, we just have a couple more strategies here to go through, and then have some time for questions or anything else you would like to talk about. Some strategies is thinking positive, and this again is simply just pointing out positive behaviors. I see that you did a really great job cleaning up the toys. Thank you so much. And pointing them out and saying them. I think sometimes we can forget to say what we're thinking on the inside, maybe like even saying like, wow, I'm feeling really great. We got everything done and now we can go do this because we finished really quick. And just talking through the outcome of a positive behavior. Setting clear expectations. We've talked about this, letting children know what to do. But I do think for preschoolers especially, the idea of first then or when then are really magical words. I use them all the time in my classroom. This idea that you have your child do the like least desirable thing in their eyes first, then the more desirable thing. So you can say something like, first clean up the toys and then it's time for snack. So they're ready to have snack. They want to have snack, but you know, you have routines. You want them to learn to clean up. So you could do first then, or you can do something like first we're going to go on the swings with your younger brother. Then we can go climb the rocks with you. So just showing them that like, I do see that you have things you want to do, but we also have to do these other things. So first we'll do these other things and then we'll do what you really want to do. So making sure you be clear on those expectations. And then again, following through is so big because if you don't follow through, then they pick up on that. Even with positive behaviors, if you don't follow through with a positive consequence, they'll remember. Remember that it might not work. So being mindful of responses, again, validating those feelings. I see that you're angry, but we may not do that when you're angry. And then saving this don't and no for safety times. So instead of saying no, you may not, say, okay, I see that you want to, but I think we need to do this, or you cannot do that, but we can do this. So giving them choices of what they can do, and then saving the don't and the no for those really big safety issues. Because sometimes we do have to say no. And that's because you cannot walk across the street without holding my hand. That's a no. And making sure that they understand the difference and what to do afterwards. And then look for reasons behind the behaviors. We have tons of workshops just on this alone. There's this idea that behaviors are all meaningful that we talked about at the beginning. Behaviors are communicating something to you. They're typically for different reasons behind behaviors. We're not going to go deep into that right now. But there is this idea that something happens and then a behavior happens and then there's a consequence. That something that happens before is known as the antecedent or sometimes a trigger, and then it causes a behavior. It could be something as simple as the curtain goes down at the play and we all clap. So the behavior is clapping, the trigger was the curtain going down. So, I mean, that's just a simple example, not related to children. And then the cast comes back out and that's the consequence and they all say it's all done and we leave. So there are reasons for behaviors. And so when your child does have a big behavior, a big emotion, try to think through like what happened right before this. That will help you know how to best respond or how to best maybe prevent things in the future. And then also following through with logical and natural consequences. We have another workshop coming up called The Power of Rewards. a little bit later in the month. I think maybe next month it's on our events calendar. But we're going to talk just a little bit about logical consequences. They're not anything revolutionary, but there's this idea that it has to relate to and respect the child, so the behavior. So maybe talking back, if you are old enough, then you probably know about or have experienced mouth washing with soap. So talking back, a punishment, obviously, that's a punishment. But a consequence would be more of loss of a privilege that's directly related to what they're doing right now until the attitude improves. So this would be more for your school agers. It's not as common for your 3-year-olds because, you know, they're still working through those big emotions. But even setting firm boundaries there, like, you may not talk to me like that. I don't want to play when people talk to me like that. And talking through that and giving those words to them. The idea that a child throws food at dinner, with the exception of young toddlers and younger, they are learning, I will say. I am experiencing that with my child right now. It's challenging. It's definitely one of my trigger behaviors, those hot button behaviors. So something like no screen time for a week, would it make sense? It's not related to throwing dinner at all, or even no screen time for the day. A consequence would be to clean up the mess in any way possible. And if they refuse to clean up the mess, then the mess stays, and then they have a choice to do X or Z, and they still have to clean up the mess, following through with that consequence. And then behavior is refusing to clean up toys. So this idea of being sent to your room, well, then they didn't have to clean up the toys. So they kind of, it's not about winning or losing, but they got what they wanted, if you will. And so the consequence then would be instead like, okay, we're still going to clean up these toys, but now we're going to lose privilege of playing with the toys the same day or a time associated with when they were refusing to clean up the toys. So those are just some like examples of punishment versus consequences. However, my colleague will be doing a workshop all about rewards to talk more in depth about these. This again, punishments, consequences, rewards, there's so much to unpack there. This is more hopefully helpful to you in terms of just in general what parenting and positive parenting is, what it could look like, and maybe even just to help you see that you're on the right track. And sometimes going to workshops like these just are really great reminders that, okay, I'm doing it, and it can be hard. And so hopefully this was something of those for you. We do provide one-on-one support. We typically don't talk about specific examples on our workshops. But if you are interested in talking with me or my colleague, she's really great with toddlers. I use her all the time for toddlers questions. I tend to specialize more with the preschoolers and school agers, but you can fill out our family information form there, and it will give us all your information. We'll contact you and we'll say, hey, what do you need? How can we support you? And we'll talk through. And then we'll give you the resources that we think would best support your needs. But what we do sometimes with families is support them with maybe making like a nighttime routine and a visual schedule to go with it. We can help give you some tips or ideas of where to start. And then we check in a couple of weeks to see how you're doing with it, how you're feeling, if it's working. But any change of routine and any change of the way you parent, it usually takes a few weeks to see positive results. Children that don't always react the way we think they're going to the first couple of weeks because they're like, oh, this is new. And they might test a little boundaries, they might test a little limits, they might try to figure it out. But once you stay consistent and you work through it together with them, then you tend to follow or sync up together is what I'm trying to say. All right, well, again, my name is Jamie. If you don't want to fill out the form and that's too much, I get that. And my email's on the screen. It's jamiel@childcareanswers.org. I am very grateful that you came and attended today. I hope that maybe you found something, again, that was helpful for you and your journey.